use your SEO knowledge as a starting point and be very critical about what you know. Discover what you think you need to know and use AI to learn as much as possible. The more you learn, the more you can get out of AI. Hi, my name is Sante Achille, and this is SEO in 2026.
Sante, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
I would say it's learning how to learn. So using AI and enhancing our skills to learn.
So has the way that we learn how to learn changed in the era of AI?
I definitely think it has not yet. I think it is going to. And I think the winners are going to be the people who can master the art of learning. If you go back and you look at the system, how we have been educated, it's all been a sort of like a sausage making machine, hasn't it? So we go in one end, the meat goes in one end, goes through the grinder, and it's out in the other end, and we're a sausage, right?
Ever since the factories in the Victorian era.
But we are still very much in that kind of era from a educational point of view, because there's a curricula and it's very well defined, isn't it? AI has sort of like broken that. The internet has disrupted. I think AI is the final blow to a system of, let's say, not imposing, but predefining what we learn, because we have somebody there 24 hours a day who can answer just about any kind of question that we throw at it, or he or she, depends on, but we don't want to get into that kind of debate. I mean, this PA is there, and it can be a blessing or a curse. At the moment, I think a lot of people have embraced the path of least resistance, where everybody is just, let's say, hogging all kinds of information, harvesting, and using it without too much thought. So there is a lot of, I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to ask AI, and AI is going to tell me how to do it. But that's not what we need. I think the people that are actually going to be successful are the ones that are going to say, I need to reach an objective. I need to define something. I need to do something. What do I need to know? What is the level? What is the threshold that I need to know, so that I can actually tell AI what to do to get the most out of AI?
It feels like when you talk about the people that are to be successful, it feels like only a relatively small percentage of people will harness the power of AI as an educational tool, certainly initially, and take advantage of that. Because, again, if you go back 100 plus years ago when the existing educational systems were set up, it was all about compliance, all about teaching people the same things, getting people in a classroom, and ensuring that everyone paid attention. But now people have to be proactive in their approach in terms of what questions to ask, and their thirst for knowledge has to come from themselves. Do you think that that's likely, that we're going to create a great divide between people that actually are proactive and search for knowledge themselves and people that can't be bothered?
I'll answer that question with a quote from a famous Italian sociologist, when in an event, a very closed event for a board of engineers about 14 years ago. The title of his presentation was 20 Megatrends for 2020. They were all wrong, but there was one takeaway that stuck with me and that I think was extremely relevant. And that takeaway was, the most successful people will be the ones who are the most creative, in a nutshell. So creativity does not really sync well with, let's say, the sausage approach, where things go in one end and they come out on the other. because learning, like life, is a very non-linear procedure. And it's a very personal kind of thing. The way I learn is going to be different from the way you learn. And that's where AI can step in, or it can be our partner, our very personal partner, in helping us define the way we build, let's say, the pathways that can lead us, let's say, to success. And so therefore success, I think, is always just to corroborate on the consideration that I just described, I think is in the hands of the very creative. Creativity is something that will go hand in hand with services to the people. And the more we go on and the more things are automated, the more a value will be coming from those who can actually curate the best services for people.
And certainly many SEOs started off by being very creative. If you look back 20 years ago, SEO really came from being creative in terms of figuring out algorithms and what it meant in terms of ranking and driving traffic and that thirst for knowledge. And I would hope that many SEOs are still like that nowadays. But to take a slight side road, I'm intrigued to also ask you the question, what do you think that this makes for the future of formal education, the future of universities, for instance? Do you think that's going to change significantly as well?
That's a question that brings to mind a quotation I heard recently on a podcast about scientists, that science progresses one funeral at a time. So I think, yes, it's going to come about. It will be slow because there will be a lot of kickback from the institutions and from people who are, let's say, want to continue doing things the way they have always been done. There is such a potential to actually accelerate the rate at which one can learn with the AI that when you scratch the surface, when you go beyond scratching the surface of using AI with just simple questions, but prompting it in a very articulated, I won't say complex, but articulated way, you realize that you can really unearth an incredible amount of information that can help you learn. To go back to so for instance, I started learning some rudimental coding, not to become obviously a programmer, but to move things around in my SEO day-to-day work. Take stuff from Search Console, elaborate it, create all kinds of different Excel files for reporting. That was extremely painful at the very beginning because I did some rudimental coding in the very, very early days of my academic curriculum when computers were just about out, the very first ones. So, and then I sort of started taking a tangent where I had the urge, the need, the necessity to get some stuff done. And I was just asking, I use Claude a lot rather than ChatGPT. So I'm not mainstream in it.
Any particular reason?
Particular reason, I was finding it much more human. So I like the approach. I like the way it was answering. I like the reasoning that it was, and it still is feeding me. And in fact, I'm still stuck with it until somebody proves me. My son is actually going back to ChatGPT 5, and he's telling me that it's quite impressive. So I'll probably go back and take a look at it. So it is very tempting for everybody to go on to an AI agent, a large language model, and ask a question and get back a very nice piece of code. The problem is that everybody's going to be doing that. It's going to lose its value very soon. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years at the most. So how do you keep your value? Because that's what we need to do. I've been doing that now for 30 years. So I trust my gut. And my gut tells me to be, you have to move ahead and do things in that way. And just to be very, let's say, to stick a little bit on beyond theme, because I know that there are the younger ones who are very pressing for time. They want something actionable about this, right? So if we look at what's happening with clicks and all of the observations that we can see, we note that clicks are going down. There was a recent article in Search Engine Journal that was documenting how the number of impressions was going up and the number of clicks was going down. So there is already sort of like a crunch on let's say, traditional SEO, in the sense that people are not reaching a website the way they were by search. And the only alternative there is right now that I can see is one of that I see and that other people have rightfully been talking about. So, I mean, I'm not discovering anything. I'm just acknowledging the fact that there's a need to build the brand. Now, one of the ways that we can do that is, let's say, storytelling. Okay, storytelling is another very used and abused word. But I've read a book. This is something that I want to share with everybody who's with us today. It's a book. The title is A Story is a Deal. Okay. I've read this book twice. Well, it's a very articulated book and talks about a lot of things. I really think it is a book that anybody who is interested in looking beyond what is happening and looking beyond the, let's say, the basics that I and many other people have covered and who will cover in SEO in 2026, we'll talk about. Let's talk about the brand and how we can look at the brand and build the brand and substantiate the brand, looking at things from very different points of view. I've read this book twice already, and I'm probably going to go for a third run. And I'm extracting elements for further consideration to build a matrix around which a company can use a very elaborated prompting to build a story. So to use a matrix of values, of elements that aggregate people, that create emotions, that move people, that push them all together in a way that is highly, let's say, can be associated to the brand. This book has a very interesting opening that it starts off with, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks to work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. This is the reaching point that I think an SEO that is looking ahead would probably want to keep as the lighthouse, that beacon, because we know the basic SEOs. So we know how to build, let's say, structure a story from a technical point of view. The real challenge then is to be creative and to work with the company to articulate this story. Let's say weave it into the fabric of the marketing. We are marketers. And I think AI can be an outstanding ally to do this, because without AI, I think it would be something that, you would need a team of people to address. And you can just sit and do this in one or two people.
I see that this book, A Story is a Deal, was written by Will Storr, and he also wrote The Science of Storytelling. Have you happened to have read that book as well?
No, I haven't. I'm stuck on this one because there's so much in it that is really interesting that I'm still sort of like digesting it. And I'm beginning to pull out, let's say, elements that I'm going to use as pseudocode in my prompting of AI to build the matrix, the matrix that I mentioned. So basically, it's sort of like pseudocode is like the pre-code before you actually write code that a machine can execute. So it is the pre-prompting. So before you build the prompt in AI, I typically build a pre-prompt, especially if it is a complicated or an articulated task. So I forge a structure, a very detailed list of tasks that I want to formulate. First of all, for myself, pen is always around here. I've come back to using pen and paper a lot, and I do as less as possible typing that I possibly can, as it helps think a lot more than just banging away at a keyboard. Been doing that for too many years, David.
I'm banging over a keyboard has a significant limitation in terms of the number of keys that you can also press in a minute. Would you ever have a generalized brain interface installed in your brain so that you could actually interact directly with AI and have your thoughts share with AI?
I've never thought of that, actually. My thinking has just gone to the level of I'm just waiting for Claude. Hey, Claude, by the way, if you're listening, please take note, to be able to just talk like we're talking now to an agent instead of banging on a keyboard to actually, which isn't necessary. I mean, I've written a prompt of about 5 or 6 pages, and I've uploaded it to the large language models, and it works fine as well. It's just that, you have this intermediate passage where you do the uploading, but it works fine.
There's one other common theme that you've shared today, and I'd just like to ask you about that before we conclude, and that is the phrase, be creative. Do you believe that anyone can be taught to be creative, or is it a natural trait?
I don't believe in predefined traits. I think anybody can develop a line of creativity. Obviously, we're not all the same, of course. So some of us are more inclined to be creative in the arts. Creativity is a trait that you can actually is a broad skill, I would say. Creativity also means being open to new ideas, to explore, to be curious. I think if you're curious, you'll go down different paths. You'll be open to exploring something different, something new, and that's where, let's say, one of the first challenges starts for basically anybody. I mean, if you sit and if you just continue doing things as you normally do because you're not really interested in exploring. That's one of the biggest barriers that your potential and your creativity face.
Sante, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
The key tip is use your AI, use your SEO knowledge as a starting point, and be very critical about what you know. Discover what you think you need to know, and use AI to learn as much as possible. The more you learn, the more you can get out of AI.
Sante Achille is a search marketing specialist and data analyst. Find out more over on LinkedIn. Sante, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.